by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2005, it's a Hyundai Accent, and it comes to me today, the customer actually brought the vehicle in telling me they wanted me to change the left front axle because they had a family member do the brakes on it and they see it's leaking and they weren't sure exactly how to do it themselves. So I'm going to take you up front, I'm going to show you where it's leaking from and why it's leaking and how to go about removing the old axle and replacing it with the new one. It's really not a hard job, but you'll need a couple of tools. You'll probably need an air gun if you have one. If not, you'll need basic hand tools. You're going to need a pry bar, fairly long pry bar to pull pop the axle out of the transmission. But I'm going to bring you up front, I'm going to show you step by step, and we'll get through this. All right, let me show you what it looks like. Okay, now looking at it underneath the vehicle, you can see that boot blew out and it lost all the grease up inside here. So, all right, let me get set up, and we're going to get started, and we'll get some basic hand tools, and we're going to get this wheel off and continue on it. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take out this cotter pin right here, and you just twist it up and out of the way, and we'll pull it right out. Looks to me like somebody's already been in here. This cotter pin has been out already. Leads me to believe that maybe something else went inside here, went wrong. While they were trying to take it out, they probably couldn't get it out. All right, so we just tap that cotter pin out there, and we just pull it out like this. And we're going to take this nut off right here. And always push the axle in. The axle's stuck a little bit, so we're just going to tap it in just a little bit. Just going to put the castle nut on for a minute just to see if it moves when you tap it in, which it did. And we didn't bang it too hard, we just banged it just enough to make it loosen up a little bit. And then we're going to take the nut off. We can take that washer out. What I always do then is I remove the caliper and just move it up to the side to relocate it just a little bit, because I'm going to be taking these two bolts out. And the one bolt is a little bit difficult to get to right here because the brake line is in the way. You could play around and try to get it past it, but I'll just remove it because I could pull the caliper, the rotor assembly further out so I can access it easier. Probably about a 13 or a 14 millimeter bolt that holds the caliper in place. And we're just going to take it and we're going to rotate the caliper out of the way. Actually, it's a 12 millimeter. And don't lose any of this stuff because we're going to need to put it back in. That's our bolt. We're just going to push the piston back in just a little bit so we can rotate the caliper up. We're going to take the caliper and put it off to the side for now. We're going to hold it up with a piece of wire so it's not hanging. And we'll just put it off to the side like that. Now these brake pads may fall out, but we'll see how it goes. If they do, we're just going to remove them. You may want to screw a nut just onto the rotor just to keep it from moving too much. And now we're going to take out these two 17 millimeter bolts right here. You're going to need to You're going to need to hold the nut, and you need the bolt on the side. And we'll take it out, don't lose it. We're going to need to use these over again. Same thing up here. Take this one out here. You hold it right there. And we'll shoot that off. We're just going to take the bolts out, and we're going to take the washers off. Take the bolt out. Sometimes the bolts stick a little bit, just tap it out. Don't hit it with a regular hammer. As you see, I'm using a hammer that's made for that. It won't damage the threads. And then we'll pull out the bolts from the other side. Just going to tap it through ever so slightly because it's stuck. Being careful not to damage the threads at all, because you're going to need to reuse this bolt. Next thing we'll do is just separate the rotor and the knuckle from the axle, and now we're going to tap this in here. We already know it's loose, but you're going to tap it very easy and it comes right out. Show you underneath the bottom there how you're going to remove the axle from the car. You're going to need a very long pry bar to do this, and we're going to go underneath the car, and we'll continue from the bottom. And what we're going to do is we're going to come underneath the bottom right here, and we're going to catch the inner part of the axle here, right here, with the pry bar, and we're going to pry it out. We're going to catch it in here like this, and then we're going to pry it out. Now I'm going to need two hands, but you're basically going to just push on this here and it pops it right out. Make sure you've got a bucket underneath, because you are going to lose a little bit of transmission fluid. So all right, let me do that. I'm just going to point this out to you, show you exactly how I did it. You see that little groove right there in the side here? You want to get the pry bar on the groove against the bolt, and you pry it, and it comes right out like that. You don't want to damage that seal that's inside there, so you just catch it when it's in here and you pull it out a little bit. Alright, so let's pull the axle out, and we'll get the new one right away back in there. Okay, I just want to point this out. The axles today come with little pieces over the top. You throw these away. You don't have to worry about them. Same thing on this side over here. You take your nut off and discard this piece right here. I tapped on that nut because most axles all come with a new nut. Alright, next thing we're going to do now is we're going to pull that axle out of there. Just give it a little bit of a pull, and it comes right out. Oh, look at that, it made a liar out of me. No leaks, nothing's leaking. Match up your axle to make sure it's the correct splines on it, and match up the opposite end too. Now you can see that this one has no ABS ring on it. This one has an ABS ring. It's not going to interfere with it. You could put it in just the way it is, and it'll be fine. But if you want to take it off, you can just hit this off with a hammer, and it'll pop right off. There's no need to, though. You could leave it right on it. You get in here with a chisel like this, and you just bang on that ring, and it'll pop right off. Alright? Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of lube. We're just going to lube up the shaft a little bit, where it's going to go in, where it's going to enter the seal, so we don't any damage to the seal itself. You can use transmission fluid, you could use grease, you can use whatever you got. Alright? Line up your axle into the transmission, and you'll turn it until you feel it lock in, sort of. it doesn't go any further. Then what you do is you screw your nut on here like this until it's even there, and then we're going to tap on it very lightly until that axle pops into the transmission, and you'll feel it pop in. There it is, you feel it pop right in. You don't have to beat the heck out of it, but when you turn it, make sure it lines up the way it's supposed to, and we'll put it in. All right, now underneath here, before you put it all together, you always want to make sure that your axle has popped into the transmission as far as it's supposed to, and it did. It's in as far as it can go. And what you're going to do is just take your axle and you put it right into the back of the bearing, and you lift it up and you just turn it until the axle comes through over in this area right here. And just line this up with your spindle and your strut. And then you can take your bolts that you previously took out, and you can put them right back through there. Now sometimes it's a pain in the rear end to line these up here. You could put a scribe in the other side here, or a drift or whatever, and you can move it around as needed. Same thing on the bottom one. Push it through. And we're going to put our lock washer on that we previously took off. On here. And again on the bottom one. We're going to put those two nuts on that we previously took off, that we held onto and did not discard. Now when you tighten these up, you can tighten them with a torque wrench. And I think it's supposed to be around 65 foot-pounds. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually use my air gun. And tighten it down a little bit. And then we're going to come back and we are going to use a torque wrench on it. I'm not tightening these, I'm just snugging them down. Same thing up here. I'm going to grab our torque wrench and we're going to tighten this down. It does call for 65 foot-pounds. So we are going to tighten them to 65. Same thing on the bottom here. All right, they're tight. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our caliper that we hung up out of the way here. We're going to put it back on the top here. And then we're going to rotate it down. And we're going to catch that brake bolt back in there that we previously took out. Tighten that up. Okay, now, we're not going to use the old one, we're going to throw it away. But we are going to use the old washer that was on here like that. Alright, now we're going to put the nut back on here, and we're going to air gun this back on. And then you have to line it up so that you can get your cotter pin back through it. take the cotter pin, slide it back through here like this. Get our socket pliers. And we'll bend our cotter pin back over. Just going to tap it flat. Alright. And that's pretty much it. Let me just bring you in. I'm going to show you exactly what I did again. Alright. We made sure our axle popped into the transmission all the way. It's all the way in as far as it can go. We tightened up the bolts that are here on the knuckle to make sure that they're at the proper torque. Now, if you don't have a torque wrench, you don't have to kill yourself. It doesn't really matter too much. Just snug them down pretty good. Most guys don't use a torque wrench, including myself. Most of the time, I just egg on them on. We tightened in our nut right here. We used our new nut. We used our old washer, and we tightened it down as tight as we could. We also tightened up the bolt on the bottom right over here for the brakes, and that's it. We're pretty much all set. All right. So that's it. We're going to take it out and drive it now, make sure everything is okay, and then it's out the door. All right, like always, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, you drop me a line. Be more than happy to talk to you about anything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. And don't forget to check your transmission fluid level before you put this job out the door.